If you're tired of going around in circles with marriage counseling and you haven't crossed the finish line to put your marriage back on track, this video is for you.
In this two-part series, we go into the 6 steps to save your marriage and prevent divorce. Now, it's important to watch both videos because each step builds on the previous ones. And the 4th step is so crucial to reigniting passion and attraction, especially if you're in a sexless marriage. Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm Emily.
And we help couples and singles over 40 with the one thing that really matters.
And that is real intimacy and great sex. If you love deep content about how to live your dream relationship, please consider subscribing to our channel and hit the bell notification button.
In this part 1 video, we cover the first 3 steps and then we'll cover the remaining steps in the second video. Okay, so let's dive into the 6 steps.
So the first step is establish that your shared goal is to save your marriage and focus your energy there.
In working with our clients, the most successful couples work happens when both people recognize that there's a problem and both are ready to focus the required energy on saving the marriage.
So these couples recognize that they need help in rebuilding it, either because they have neglected it for too long, or more commonly, they just don't know how to go about rekindling the passion and the intimate connection they once had.
So there are 5 steps to this alignment process, and the first one is reaffirming your love for each other, as this will be the foundation upon which you're going to build the rest of your marriage. The second is confirm that you each want to stay in this marriage, whatever it takes.
And the third is to agree that what you have today is not really the marriage that you want, and that you want to make changes.
And the 4th is talk about how you'd like your marriage to be. How do you visualize your new ideal marriage? Make sure that you're both realistic about what is possible. And the focus of this step is on both the quality of your relationship, like we'd like to be more vulnerable, we'd like to have more communication, more honesty, more affirmation, maybe more pillow talk, more physical touch, making love more often, etc.
Yeah.
How you spend your time together, and how often, and for how long. Maybe it's reigniting the passion you once had and having more intimate connection. Maybe you'll be retiring soon and you dream about traveling the world together, or spending time with your family, your grandkids, or learning to dance together, or playing more golf together. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be perfectly aligned.
There just needs to be some overlap in your recreational companionship and your goals, and you might have to work to find what that overlap is. And then the 5th one is to finally commit to work with each other on your relationship and to make a conscious decision that it is a top priority in your life right now. And with all the responsibilities and the distractions you have every day, it is crucial that both you and your partner set aside playtime on your calendars to spend time together at least every few days, and more often if that's possible.
So we recommend that you plan your intimate time by blocking out 2 to 3 hours at a time at an agreed to frequency. And by setting aside the time to connect emotionally and physically, you affirm that this relationship is indeed your priority. Now, you don't have to make love every time you get together if it's not happening for you in that moment. Or for that matter, spend the whole 2 to 3 hours together either. But just having the time blocked out on your calendar will help remind you both and reassure you both that you're each committed to your marriage and you can count on having that time together for just you two.
So it's important to be patient and recognize that there are going to be difficult times as you work through your many issues that have been swept under the rug, and that you're willing to make changes. So you just have to remind yourself that change is hard, and achieving your shared relationship goals is worth the effort. So if you both can't agree on these things, or one of you is not ready to work on your marriage, don't despair. Just one of you can work to save the marriage using the same steps that we're about to present, with the goals of getting your partner on board and ready to make a commitment. Because when one person changes, the other person has to change by default.
So this is how we break the pattern, right? I mean, the issue with many marriages is that you get into this familiar and comfortable pattern that's working against building and maintaining the kind of intimacy that you want. And this kind of first step by one member of the couple is a way to break that cycle, the way to start something new, and that's really an important first step.
So if you're really entrenched in your opposing views, then you may really benefit from seeing a trained coach or counselor to help you hear an unbiased perspective and reaffirm your shared goals, and more importantly, to create a safe space for you to work through the difficult issues together that you swept under the rug, and to avoid further conflict and blockages. So this brings us to step 2 in saving your marriage, and that is share your spiritual, intellectual, emotional, and physical needs with each other.
Right, so let's take those one at a time, because each of them is important in terms of establishing compatibility and common ground and connection in the relationship. So spirituality, what do you mean by spirituality?
Spirituality could mean anything from believing in something greater than yourself to belonging to a church or a synagogue or a mosque. It's about whether or not you and your partner are aligned in that, and how important is that spirituality to you.
Right.
One person may be agnostic and the other person may go to church, and if that's okay with you guys, that's fine. So for us, you were brought up in a religion, and you're no longer in that.
I was brought up as a Catholic.
You're no longer...
I'm currently a member of the Unitarian Church.
in that religion, and I was brought up Buddhist, and so essentially, we share spiritual commonality in the fact that we believe in the higher self. We believe in something greater than us that is helping us guide our journey together. So through our work with internal family systems, we have really tapped into the spiritual side of ourselves. So
Right.
we have that in common, and this is how we have the vulnerable conversations that we do, because we speak through our parts, for our parts, and have our higher self just inform the way of how this relationship should develop.
Yeah, so I have a real affinity for sort of Buddhism and the philosophies of Buddhism, not so much the specific practices, but the ideas of meditation and self-exploration, and that's an area that we share in common. And as a part of that, it really brings us into connection on another area, which is intellectual compatibility. So intellectual compatibility is the second area where we're talking about needs. So in this particular case, personal growth is an intellectual space that Emily and I are both really into, and we love learning about it because it allows us to be that much more effective in helping coach the couples and the singles that we do work with.
Yeah, and that also helps to grow our relationship, because we get to talk about the intellectual aspects of, whoa, this childhood part of you is showing up in this way in our relationship. So during our initial dating process, as we talked more about our parts, and he would chime in on my YouTube channel content, giving me ideas about what I should share. Just the month 3 of our dating journey was when he realized, oh my gosh, I just retired from corporate America, and I thought I was going into retirement, and it looks like I'm going into an encore career.
My retirement lasted 2 weeks.
So this is about finding some sort of common ground, because you have other interests that I'm not interested in,
Well, that's
like
the thing.
astronomy
Yeah.
and chess.
Yeah, so I have a ton of interests that I don't expect anybody to share. And that includes, astrophysics and astronomy. It includes history and genealogy. I love to play chess, and not that that's that intellectual. That's more like a strategy game that I love to play, but it's deep. So I spend energy on those things. I'm also a hobby woodworker. I like to go into my little man cave in my wood shop and make things. The point is that we don't have to be compatible on every intellectual interest or every recreational activity. It's just that we have enough common ground to stay connected. In this particular area, we're talking about intellectual connection now.
So what are the common things that you and your partner can explore together? Maybe you read a book together to learn something new. Or if your partner is interested in things that are just so different than what you're interested in, this doesn't mean that the marriage cannot be saved. It just means that each of you has your own little group of people that you talk about these intellectual things with, and that you're okay with it, and you give each other the space to do that. And so the more you talk about what would make you happy in that dimension, including hanging out with other people who are interested in astronomy or physics or whatever it is,
Right.
it's totally fine. It doesn't mean that your marriage is going to go south if you don't have intellectual interest with each other.
Right, so we've talked about spiritual needs, we've talked about intellectual needs. The next one is emotional needs. And emotional needs are at sort of the core of the relationship. With intellectual needs, I can meet those with any number of other people besides Emily. But with the emotional needs, the relationship, one of the key reasons that we're in relationship is to get our emotional needs met.
Yeah, because otherwise, then it's just, well, what's the point?
Right.
So it's the emotional needs being met that is the glue that keeps a couple together. And the emotional needs not being met is probably the number one driver of sexless marriages and also divorces, because you haven't been taught how to speak for your deepest fears and to show all these other parts of you that you maybe have not even shown or don't feel safe to show.
Right. Okay. So let's give some examples of what we mean by emotional needs. When you say it, what comes to mind for you?
So emotional needs means, like, for me, you want to see all parts of who I am, which means I get to share when I'm scared, if I witness, let's say he does something, and let's say if he's going up a ladder, or let's say climbing up the, whatever you call it, on the sailboat when it was really windy.
I was up on the deck. Tying off the mainsail.
Yeah, and I'm trying to steer the boat, and the wind is like really high.
So that need for safety?
Need for safety. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
really scary for me to watch you go up there because I could lose you and I'm going to be abandoned.
Yeah, I was fine, by the way, but it's
Well,
okay.
you survived, but it was scary.
The thing
for
about
me.
emotions is they aren't rational, and that's okay. They don't have to be rational. That Emily was, scared about what I was doing, I completely understand and respect that. Other emotional needs are things, so we talked about safety, we talked about trust, being able to trust your partner so you can be vulnerable and not be judged. And other kinds of emotional needs that come to mind? What else?
To be able to cry, to be able to have an angry outburst. And this is what we teach the people who follow us and who work with us, is really how do you hold space for an angry part and not feed into the angry energy. Because when I'm in anger, it's a little girl that's in anger. Or when you're in anger energy, once in a while you're mad at yourself, it frightens the heck out of me. I know he's not directing it towards me, he's directing it at his phone or at the GPS.
or any kind of technology.
Yeah, or like burning the bacon, and he's like, feel afraid of hell, and that scares me. So I feel safe to share with him. I feel numb right now. That energy doesn't feel safe for me because of what I experienced in childhood. Because I witnessed my father get angry at my mother and call her names, and so that's my number one wound from childhood. So when I feel like your voice is going up and the angry energy is about to erupt, I don't like that.
Right.
So this is feeling safe to share that with him from a very vulnerable place. Instead of saying, don't get angry at me, you shouldn't get angry, you shouldn't raise your voice, what's going to happen if I did that to you?
Yeah, that doesn't help at all.
Right, he's just going to get defensive and do more of it. So that's the example of emotional needs that you can share with your partner, so that he can like, oh, really? That's what happens to you?
Right. So one way to think about this particular thing is that, she gets me. She understands why I am the way I am and accepts me for all of the flaws that I have, all the warts and all of the, bad habits and everything else. That she loves me anyway. And so this is a fundamental need that I think I share with a lot of people, but it's just simply the need to be understood and accepted for who we are. Okay, so the fourth need. So we're talking about expressing your needs to each other and really understanding your needs to each other, and it's there's a whole process here. The fourth one is physical needs, and this is much more than sex, although it certainly includes sex. It's physical touch, it's affection, it's just presence, and it can be so important in terms of making each member of the couple feel connected.
Yeah, what are your needs for intimate connection? How many times a week is okay with you? How many times a week is it okay for your partner? And what does that look like? Does that mean you explore new ways of being intimate? Or does that mean just doing the usual? There's no judgment on either
Right.
way you go. So it's about the comfort level through which you can talk about sex with your partner, and that can really be a bonding experience for the two of you.
Right, and I mean, outside of the bedroom, if you're in public, are you okay with kissing in public, holding hands? What's the level of physical connection that you really desire? In each of those kinds of settings.
Yes. So number 2 is about sharing all of your needs with your partner, and that is an important step to saving your marriage so that you guys can give each other what you need.
So to help you talk about your needs and even think about your needs, because sometimes we find that people just aren't familiar with the vocabulary of needs. So we've created a download for you, and it's a needs inventory. So it'll just be a way of prompting you or jogging your thinking about how to think about your own needs, and we'll link to that in the notes. Another really important tool that we really love to see our clients work through is something called the 5 love languages. So there's this body of research and an online tool that basically helps you figure out what your most important 2 languages are of the 5. And it's really interesting to compare notes once you get the insights. So my top 2 are physical touch and words of affirmation.
And mine are the same, physical touch and words of affirmation. And the other 3 are acts of service, quality time, and gifts. So when you take this 10-minute free quiz on the 5lovelanguages.com website, you'll be able to see what are your top 2 and what are your partner's top 2 if they are willing to take the test. Because one of the ways that couples get into conflict is that they're not speaking each other's love language, meaning somebody can have physical touch and words of affirmation, and another person can have acts of service and quality time as their top 2, so it's not aligning. So we tend to give what we need. So if the quality time person is giving the physical touch person the quality time, but is not touching them in the way they need to be touched, then it's going to create conflict and resentment.
It's a great model in terms of comparing notes and having a conversation around your needs. And it boils it down to these 5 love languages, which might be oversimplified, but they're really important concepts. And when you find that there is a need that's not being met, and you discover that need you have is not on the top 2 lists for your partner, you start to understand why it's not obvious to your partner that's a need that you have that you're hoping that they can help you meet.
Yeah. And another important need that many couples have is the need for their partner to remain physically attractive.
So this is about being healthy, this is about being fit, this is about doing the best you can, given that we're all aging. But how do you maintain your health? How do you maintain your physical attractiveness for your partner? And we live in America, so there's a bit of an epidemic here around letting ourselves go. And if that's the case, there's always hope for you. But we really encourage each couple to consciously make decisions around their own health and their own fitness that will help them attract their partner.
Yeah, because you were attracted to your partner in the first place because of physical attractiveness. So to judge it as, it's so shallow to have physical attractiveness as a long-term need, well, okay, if the physical attractiveness isn't there anymore, and the turn on isn't there anymore, then do you want to live as roommates?
Right. I mean,
So it's a real need. We're wired for
that's what I was going to say.
sexual energy.
Yeah, this is genetic programming we're talking about now. This goes back to the very, very, very early stages of the evolution of species. That seeking out attractive mates is in our programming. It's in our brains. It's hardwired. So it's nothing that we want to be judgmental about, saying that it's shallow. It's real. And all you have to do is ask anybody who's looking at their favorite actor or actress, and you see that kind of physical ideal, and it's attractive. So wouldn't you want to have that same kind of energy between each of you in the couple? So that's the idea, and there is nothing shallow about it. So step 3 in our 6-step process to save your marriage is do the internal work on yourself.
This means understanding the childhood wounds that informs how you show up in your thoughts, your feelings, the strategies, the behaviors you have that just like pushes your partner's buttons. Because anytime that we are triggered by something that our partner does, it is because of our childhood wound that is feeling triggered, and they do their thing because of their childhood wound. So this is why it's so important to understand yourself, because the past is always in the present.
Yeah, most of us go through life really never understanding why it is that we do the things that we do, that we behave the way we behave, even that why we gravitate to the kind of people that we gravitate to, or why we have the needs that we have. These things are all related to what's really happened inside us over the course of our life. And Emily is referring now to a system that is at the core of how we work with our clients, and it is called the Internal Family Systems Healing Model, which was developed over 30 years ago by Dr. Richard Schwartz.
It's an evidence-based model, and it's so popular now because it gets to the root causes of the problems. The couples we work with have been through a number of other therapies, and they're like, oh my gosh, you guys finally have figured out the root causes, and you're going to get us to the finish line. So understanding the childhood wounds that cause your triggers is the key to saving your marriage. Period. Full stop.
Right on.
Yeah. That's why it's important to do the internal work, and it's best to do the internal work with someone like ourselves who can be the neutral guide, not taking any sides, so that we can help to heal your relationship.
Right. So the past is always in the present, and understanding how your past experiences, these childhood wounds, are really affecting your behaviors is at the core of now opening up the possibility that you can heal those wounds.
So, for example, if your partner is deemed self-centered, controlling, perfectionist, a micromanager.
Those are each parts.
Those are each parts in extreme roles, protecting a vulnerable little child underneath. And this is why it is so important to understand why your husband or your wife has these parts. And these parts can be dialed down or healed altogether when the inner child that it protects is finally healed through the higher self. And that's part of the healing process that we take these couples through.
Right, and we have a resource for you that I happen to be sitting next to a 2-time author.
CLIMAX, Why Great Leaders Need Love Affairs, is my second book. This is a fictional leadership story that tells the story of a bad boss. Most of us have had bad bosses. You don't feel safe, you don't trust them, they're angry, they're micromanaging. So this is a fictional story that goes into the details of how this bad boss shows up, and then it traces back to what happened to him as a child that caused him to become a bad boss, and also to become a bad husband, and also in his new relationship after the marriage caused him to not be such a great lover after all. And then there's an interesting ending to the story.
Not to spoil it.
Not to spoil it. Yeah.
Right. So we'll link to this book in the notes. And it's not just fiction, I guess is what I want to say. The couples that we work with, the benefits from this kind of work are tangible and very quickly they develop in the relationships. So one of the other things that we'll link to in the notes is a set of videos by our real clients. So don't take it from us. We want you to understand how our clients have experienced working with us. So we're publishing a set of videos that we can link to, which basically are the clients telling you exactly how this all went, how they came to work with us, what working with us was like, what the internal family systems model has been like, and what value and benefit they've gotten out of it.
So through this fictional story in this book, you're going to learn the science behind the internal family systems model of self-leadership and healing, and how it can repair your marriage and save your marriage and help you to live your dream relationship full of multi-level intimacy.
Yeah, so internal family systems, or IFS, is at the core of how we coach clients to go through doing the internal work.
And there's a video, 90-minute presentation on what internal family systems is, if you are somebody that likes to go into the weeds of learning how this is different from traditional therapy. So we'll link to that in the description box.
And we also have a shorter video on the description of what IFS is if you're not up yet for the full 90-minute version, although I do recommend it. That's how you really absorb this material, is to really get deep into it like that.
So this concludes the first video in this two-part video series on the 6 steps you need to take to save your marriage.
Number 1 is to make sure that you're aligned in terms of the goal that you both share is, in fact, to save the marriage and to really do the work that's required to save the marriage.
And step number 2 to save your marriage is about sharing your spiritual, intellectual, emotional, and physical needs.
And step number 3 is to do the internal work on yourself. And we'll get into the next steps, 4, 5, and 6 in the next video. And I think you'll really find that this is where the recommendations we're making will really start to move your relationship forward in the direction that you want it to go. If you've gotten some value out of this video, we'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button, and also feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And comment below. We would love to hear your thoughts about these steps.
We always respond to the comments in the comments below, so we really encourage you to do that. And also the bell notification, so you can stay right on top of it as we release new material.
Yeah. So we'll see you in the next video.
All right. Bye-bye.